Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. Hope you're having a great day as we continue to celebrate all the wonderful people here in Mississippi who are working in the trenches to make this such a great place to live, work, and play. Listen, it's Friday on the show, so we're going to get right to Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune, someone I have deep respect for. So thrilled that I had the opportunity to visit with him on a regular basis. And before we got a lot of cool things to talk about, some tragic things. We'll look back at Hurricane Katrina. But before we go any further, I just want to say good morning, Jeff Duncan.
Good morning, Ricky. Yeah, the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Hard to believe it's been almost 2 decades since it happened.
Isn't it amazing? 19 years. And the irony of all ironies, we win a Pulitzer Gold Medal after the storm. The Times-Picayune does as well. Publisher at the Sun-Herald. I later become publisher at the Times-Picayune. There was a time when people were trying to pit Louisiana against Mississippi. And what's interesting to me about that is I never bought into it. Governor Barber never bought into it. Most of us involved in the recovery effort never bought into it because we realized that in order for coastal Mississippi to recover, the region had to recover. And our success was ultimately going to be determined by how fast New Orleans could come back. And we got that. But here's one, a man-made disaster, the largest in United States history, with the breaking of the levees and the direct impact of Hurricane Katrina and coastal Mississippi. These, each in their own right, the worst natural disaster in American history, playing out simultaneously. I mean, let's hope we never have to deal with that again, but we probably will. Maybe it won't be us, and hopefully it's not us. But somewhere in America, we're going to have to deal with that again. And that's the sad reality of it, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and I think that unfortunately, our experience has led to a lot of improvements in America's readiness and ability to handle these type of disasters. It took something of Katrina's magnitude for America to wake up and realize, the failure that it had with, FEMA and how it responded to disasters. I can just think of a few years ago, Ricky, when what was it, Ida that we had? Yeah. The response was so much better. It was dramatically better by the federal
was
government.
it Zeta?
Yes, Zeta. Yeah. It just was a completely different world, and that's because we learned our lessons from Katrina, which was just a complete catastrophic across-the-board failure.
Hey, and I think it's sort of like 9/11. When 9/11 happened, we could never have imagined that they could, commandeer these airplanes and then fly them in. And Katrina was like that. It had that kind of effect. And the way I wrote it, this is one sentence from the book, from my forward in Haley Barber's book about Katrina. I said, when the previously unthinkable becomes the undeniable reality. We all had to, we would have never thought it. Even though, listen, hey, man, let's be straight up about this. Mark Schlestein wrote in great detail, the reporter for the Times-Picayune, about what the worst-case scenario could be. And the worst-case scenario still hasn't happened in New Orleans. That's hard to get your head around, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. And Schleffy definitely was on point with that. And we were all asleep at the wheel, everyone. Local government, federal government, city leaders. And we paid a very dear price that cost a lot of their lives and a lot of financial unrest and anguish and heartbreak. I'll never forget. It feels like yesterday to me. I know it's been close to 2 decades, but I can still have vivid memories of places I was at, stories I covered, and it went on for a long time. That's what people don't realize. Yeah, the hurricane hit on the 29th of August, but, the fallout was so dramatic. Weeks of no civil services or electricity or plumbing. It was just unlike anything I think America's ever experienced.
Hey, let me tell you something really interesting, and then I may have mentioned this to you before, but in case I didn't, I just think it's so interesting. 2 weeks before Katrina hit, now Dennis almost hit New Orleans, and he did a mandatory evacuation in New Orleans, but it went on to hit the Panhandle of Florida. So then here we go. A few weeks later, Katrina comes. Okay. I say 2 weeks before, but it might have been a week before. But anyway, Joe Cannizzaro, who's from Biloxi, offered to arrange a meeting between myself, Stan Tyner, who was the executive editor of the Sun-Herald, and Ray Nagin. And Joe Cannizzaro in a helicopter flew Ray Nagin to Gulfport. And Ray Nagin, and he didn't stay in the meeting, which I found interesting. I certainly expected him to be there, but Joe Cannizzaro stepped out of the meeting and left Ray Nagin, Stan Tyner, and myself, just the three of us, in the room together at the Great Southern Club at the top of the Hancock Bank building for 2 hours to chat. And I mentioned Mark Schlesting's piece to him. I said, you know, he was talking about how the city's prepared and the pumps are great and this and that and all this stuff. And I said, you're not worried about that? I said, look, I mean, Mark Schlesting wrote this incredible thing about what could happen. He said, no, the city's prepared. If this happens in the city, it's going to be prepared. And then how ironic, a week or two later, Katrina hits. And then he ends up in the fetal position.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I would say in his defense, I mean, the federal government's, you know, the levee walls breaking is what, obviously there's nothing we could do, you know, once that happened. And I'll never forget the day of the storm after it passed, the eye wall had passed and we were trying to get out. We'd all kind of camped in the Times Picayune building and getting out. And I remember we'd parked our cars. The old school New Orleanians told us, park on elevated freeways up above in case we had street flooding. I had no idea. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and worked all over the country. I didn't think about that. So I was parked near the bottom of a ramp that was going up on Broad Street. And the water was probably, I'd say 3 feet, had risen 3 to 4 feet behind my back wheel. It was a slanted thing. And we couldn't get out. It was the weather was still too crazy. I went out 2 hours later, Ricky, to go out, and it calmed down, and the water was closer to my back wheel. It was rising, and I thought, wait a second, why is that? At the time, I had no idea what was going on, but it made no sense to me. The water was going closer, it was rising, and now we know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, so it was just such a crazy time.
And look, you were part of such an incredible team, and what you guys did. I got to watch it here at the Sun Herald, but you got a note on. You got a T-shirt on now for people who are listening on the radio, and his T-shirt says "America needs journalists." Man, did we see that after the storm? Lord have mercy.
Yeah, it was tremendous responsibility we had for the people of the region and the city. Because everyone had to evacuate. So everyone was relying on us to get information about the city, about their homes and their neighborhoods. I'll never forget that period of time. And the traffic on NOLA.com was epic, right? I mean, it was legendary because of the unprecedented situation. Ricky, I remember going out. I got a sign because I was covering news when Rita came in a few weeks later, and we were all staying down in the hotel. What was it? The Sheraton on Canal Street. That was like our bureau for after a couple of weeks. And by that time, all the first responders in town, all the military that come in, they had pretty much shooed all the people that were holding out and staying in their homes. By that time, they'd pretty much gotten everybody out. And when Rita came through, I had the A1 assignment on the Sunday front page of the Times-Picayune news story to write about Rita. And I got out in the city. I was driving a rental car around. And I'm not kidding you, Ricky. I drove mile after mile after mile. There was not another human being in sight. I don't think an American city of the size of New Orleans will ever be emptied like that. What do we have over in our metropolitan area? Over 1 million something people. They were gone. Everybody was gone. When's that going to happen again?
Unbelievable moment. Let's hope. I think we'll get. I look at what could happen in Tampa is similar to what could happen in New Orleans. What could happen in the Miami metro area? Oh my gosh, there's so many bad scenarios for America, yes. And any of those scenarios would put our insurance situation into a tailspin. And this could be the year. I mean, it only takes one, and we're back in a bad spot again. But let's shift gears. We're probably to the end of this segment, but before we go any further, we'll announce this part of it, and then we'll pick it up on the other side. But the thing we couldn't talk about that you had this incredible opportunity to do because you wrote the book on Drew Brees and Sean Payton. You had access to Sean Payton in Denver. And he brought you into his inner sanctum, and you got the opportunity to have an unprecedented, very disclosing conversation over a good long period of time. And I want to, when we get back on the other side, we'll talk specifically about the story. But man, congratulations on being able to get a story like that.
Well, I mean, I'm indebted to Sean and to the Denver Broncos who allowed me to have that access. But it was incredible. I was there for 2 days and spent several hours with him over the course of 2 days, and really got a window into his life out in Denver right now with the Broncos.
Yeah, it's going to be such an interesting piece. Now you can go to NOLA.com right now, and it's at the very top of their homepage. Jeff Duncan's story about Peyton in Denver. When we come back on the other side, we'll give you kind of some previews of that, or maybe review of that. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I have my friend Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. He's written a number of books, but one that I'm showing to Facebook and YouTube and SuperTalk TV audience is Peyton and Breeze, the men who built the greatest offense in NFL history. And incidentally, the forward is by Steve Gleason. And then, of course, he ended up collaborating with Steve on Steve's book. And hopefully there'll be a book signing down here in the fall where Steve will come over and you'll get an opportunity to go over and visit with him and his wife, Michelle, and also Jeff at some point. But because he had this great relationship with Sean Payton, it gave him the opportunity to go up there and visit with him. And it surprised the Denver staff. I'm sure it surprised the Denver media that Jeff Duncan came in and got the access that he got. So why don't you give us a sense of what it was like to be behind the scenes with Sean Payton in Denver?
Well, you know what it felt like, Ricky? It felt like when you go over to your friends, remember back when you were a kid and Christmas morning hits, and then you get to go, you enjoy your day with your family, and then you get to go over to your best friend's house, and he's got all of his new toys, and he's excited, he's wanting to show you around his new bike and all of his new stuff. That's what Sean was like when I got there. I mean, he was so excited to see somebody from New Orleans. You know, obviously we've been together here for 16 years, so I've known him pretty well. But I think it was more about showing me the new digs, his office, all the things he'd done out there, a lot of the New Orleans type of Saints-centric accoutrements that he brought with him to Denver. I mean, he's got 11 coaches on the staff that have Saints ties, 8 players, 3 other executives. So there's like a Saints West going on in Denver, and he very much has New Orleans close to his heart. I mean, his whole entire office, one wall has a large Broncos framed print, and then everything else is New Orleans on his walls. I mean,
why not? Because first of all, he's passionate. I've had the opportunity to meet him before and have conversations with him. He loves the city. And listen, his entire time in the city is centered around literally the post-Katrina world and what this and he came to understand the connection this region had to the New Orleans Saints. And he was more than a coach. He was a transformational leader, helping us see hope and opportunity and giving us back something that we felt we lost. He got that, didn't he?
Yeah, at a time when the city was crying out for leadership. There was a dearth of leadership. Remember how the city and region embraced General Honore when he came to town because he had such a strong presence and strong leadership and command? That was what Sean Payton brought to the Saints, and so people gravitated to him and Drew Brees because of their leadership ability. And I'm seeing that take place out in Denver right now. I mean, he's a unique leader. I mean, he would be a tremendous leader as a CEO of a bank, or whatever he chose. He just has innate qualities. Talking to the assistant coaches that followed him, Zach Strief, Pete Carmichael, Joe Lombardi. I mean, there's just an army of people that followed him. They'd follow him to wherever he went, because he's got that kind of presence, that kind of connection to people. And that's rare. He's got a gift as a, commander, if you will.
Hey, so when you're in his office in Denver, You talked about what you see you see the New Orleans connection on the walls. Describe his office to me.
Well, I mean, he's got his nameplate's interesting. His nameplate, head coach Sean Payton, just like a typical nameplate. On the back of his nameplate, he's got a little saying says, "Just coach your team," in quotes. And he can see that. His guests can't. And that's just a little window into the evolution of Sean Payton. He's a maniacal attention to detail guy. And he showed me on his phone, he keeps a quote from the book Atomic Habits, best-selling book that's out now, about mastery. And he talks about how, the real masters learn how to delegate and learn how to use their time wisely, and what's inefficient time, what's inefficient use of your attention, and what is efficient use. That's true mastery. That's from Atomic Habits. And he's learning that. I mean, when he first got to New Orleans, he was all over the place wanting to fix the Christmas tree in the lobby of the facility, and he's learned when to pull back on those things and just focus on his team. But the back wall, the thing that stands out is he's got the play call sheet from Super Bowl 34 framed up there, the actual sheet of the plays that he called for Super Bowl 34. He's got a number of pictures of himself with like Reggie Bush and Drew Brees and on the field, the Superdome, just a ton of New Orleans stuff on the wall.
That is so cool. That is so good. Congratulations. I really want to encourage people. Go to NOLA.com. Just put NOLA.com in, and you'll see it at the top of the website on the homepage. You'll be glad you did. Hey, let's shift gears. The Saints have their roster now. They've also, I say they have their roster now, but there's always going to be adjustments. And then, of course, we have the practice squad. There's always going to be adjustments there. I mean, we saw a flurry of change. When we got to this point last year, we saw a flurry of changes before we got to the season. And that's totally normal, right?
Yeah, and I think that's going to continue to evolve. I don't think they're completely satisfied with the roster. There's some real concerns, I think, in certain spots on this team. And, I just did our media poll. I conducted our local media poll like I do every year. That'll run early next week on NOLA.com, where there's about 30 media members. And, man, I've already looked at the early results. It's all over the place, Ricky. And I think that's true of this team. There's a lot. I call it the wide cone of uncertainty. There's a wide cone of uncertainty. This team's got a lot of talent. And if things come together, I think they can be a playoff team, win the division. But it's kind of precarious in some areas. And if things don't fall right, it could go the other way. So it's just a very interesting, fascinating season that's upon us.
Hey, listen, in the last preseason game, Trevor Pennings really did well. He scored really well.
I did not see that. I watched the game 3 times. Run blocking was fine. His pass blocking, Ricky, was abysmal. I mean,
where's the scoring come from? Where did he get this high score?
Well, the high score was based on his run blocking. His pass blocking score was really low.
Yeah.
Really low.
Yeah.
I mean, like absurdly low. So
the biggest thing that I was surprised about is then they go to defensive line, they go to running back. I'm surprised that they haven't brought, I guess it's not done yet, but in their first transactions, they didn't look at the offensive line.
I just don't know if there's anybody out there. Trevor Penning's got a lot of talent. It's his fundamentals, Ricky. If you watch him, a big man like him, he needs to be more technique sound. And they've been coaching him. Trust me, they've been coaching him for 2.5 years. He's just not, it's not applying in the games. Didn't get his hands up quick enough. He doesn't maintain his crouch. He's standing up too straight. I mean, all these things. He loses all of his power. This is a 6'6", 6'7", 325-pound athlete. I mean, he's a rare individual, but he loses all of his strength and power by his technique flaws.
Okay, so look, one of the things about this offense is it's supposed to put less pressure on the offensive line. So let's say their improvement sort of meets this less pressure point halfway, and we get to see Taysom Hill unleash, Alvin Kamara gets unleashed, Shaheed comes back. Yeah, all the components start to work. Marshawn Lattimore comes back. The defensive backs are healthy. A really rejuvenated defensive line. I mean, it could really be good if all those pieces fit together.
That's what I'm saying. That you can talk yourself into this being a good team, and things don't always fall that way, though, right? I mean, Marshawn Lattimore's been hurt already throughout camp. Been hurt the last 2 years, Alvin Kamara seems to have lost a step. Some of their key players on defense are in their 30s. Taysom Hill's 34. They're going to use him. Like, I can see things. It's a house of cards out there a little bit. That's my concern. But you can see what they've done, and I think the plan with this offensive scheme to run the ball, protect Carr, protect the offensive line, it's very smart. They know what their weaknesses are. They know they've got a scheme around it. Now, whether they can do that or not, we're going to find out. But I think it's smart the way they're attacking it. This team can't be the Drew Brees, Sean Payton, drop back and beat you by 35. They won't survive that way. They got to run the ball, protect Carr. But the thing is, Ricky, at some point, every defense in the league is going to know that. And they're going to start challenging the running game. And, there's no magic plays here. There's no pixie dust that Clint Kubiak's got. At some point, you got to have players and you got to be able to do things and execute. And I think that's the concern. I think early on they might be okay offensively, but people will start dialing in on what they're doing. And look, they're running the same offense a lot of teams in the league run. So it's not like there's going to be some wow factor. At some point, you got to block people and you got to execute.
So Carr last year, a little bit of a slow start. Then he hurts his shoulder. Then he gets a concussion. He's got all this stuff going on. If he can stay healthy, he seems more focused than ever. But one thing that's interesting, you and I have talked a lot about this. If you look into sort of what the sentiment is of New Orleans Saints fans, man, he does. I tell you, he's got a lot of detractors, man. A lot of people are pushing Spencer Rattler and all that. We got to end it now, but just real quick response to that.
Well, I'd say Matt Paris on our staff's doing a big story on that exact subject. He's doing everything right. It means trying. At some point, though, he's just got to win. And once he wins, all the detractors will fall in line.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I like what I see in his preparation. That is for sure. Hey, Jeff, congratulations on the Sean Payton story. Look forward to seeing you next week, my friend.
All right, Ricky. We'll talk then, buddy. Take care.
And as you say, America needs journalists. God, do they? Woo! Have a great day, Jeff. And we'll see you with JT Mitchell on the other side. We'll see you after this.